Overboard by Elizabeth Fama. Chapter 1. Emily might have been the only 14-year-old in the world who could change the sheets of a hospital bed with the patient still in it. She had done so more times than she cared to remember. "I didn't come here to help," Emily said, refusing the stack of folded sheets that her mother held out to her. "I just came here to see if you and James would be home for dinner tonight." She glanced around the clinic. "Where's your loyal candy stripper? Mahad is good at beds now." "We don't use the term candy stripper here, Em. I wish you'd be more polite to him at least." Olivia wiped sweat from her forehead onto the sleeve of her white lab coat. "Anyway, Mahab's looking for a repairman to fix the air conditioning." "What's the point?" Emily griped. The humidity was stiffening as it always was in Indonesia, and today there was an odor in the clinic that pinched at the back of her nose and throat. She breathed through her mouth to dull the scent. "Please, Emily, the bed. I'd really appreciate it," Olivia said, holding up the sheets again. Emily took them from her with a sigh. Olivia nodded toward a cot with a sleeping boy no more than 5 years old. "It's Yosho's bed over there. Thanks, honey." The boy's gown had fallen to the side, and Emily saw that his leg was in a cast up to the hip. Further down the row of beds, there was a dark, still little girl with an intravenous tube snaking from her arm up to a pole to a plastic bag filled with clear fluid. She was glistening with sweat. "Little Rabia's having a rough day," Olivia said over her shoulder. "Otherwise, I'd do it." Little Rabia, Emily grumbled to herself. Rabia didn't seem all that bad today. Olivia had been hovering over the 7-year-old for the past 2 weeks, and ever since the girl's parents had brought her in with a ruptured appendix. The family was from a small village 20 miles south, and they had allowed the Duncan, the local healer, to use folk potions and prayers to treat her, but she never got well. Emily's father, James, had saved Rabia's life with an emergency operation. Still, Emily thought Rabia was being stubbornly slow with her recovery. Emily went over to the cot that needed changing. When she got there, she discovered the source of the odor in the clinic. The boy had relieved himself on the bed in his sleep, and his urine had a cigarette smell of antibiotics. His gown was soaked in the front, the sheets pad were soaked beneath him. "Great," she said with a huff. She put the sheets on the chair next to his coat and went to the nurse's station to get a new gown and a wet washcloth. The trick to making a bed with the patient still in it is to make it one half at a time. Emily turned the little boy onto his right side and untucked the old sheet and pad and rolling them over against his back. Then she made the half of the bed with the new sheet and pad, neatly rolling up the excess and laying it on the side of the roll of the dirty lines. Next, she turned him onto his left side so that he was laying on the clean sheets, slid the dirty lines off the bed, unrolled the second half of the clean lines, and made the rest of the bed. Finally, being turned twice, Yasu began to stir. Emily eased him onto his back, straightened the damp gown in front, knowing that even the youngest patient could be modest. Yet she opened his eyes, so she tried to raise the head of the colt a notch or two. But the mechanism was stuck. She yanked it hard, but it slid into the place with a jolt. "You're very strong," Yosha said in his own language. "Strong like a bull." She wrinkled her nose at him and made a snorting sound. He also laughed and tried to snort like a bull himself. "You are good," she smiled. "How old are you?" he asked. "I am 100 years old," she said, sitting in a chair with a sigh. Emily had found that Indonesians often asked personal questions, and it wasn't rude to give nonsensical, evasive answers. "You speak Bahasa Indonesian well," the boy said. "That is because I have lived here for too long." "I know you. You're the doctor's daughter. You help in the clinic like that boy Mahad." "Sometimes." He looked into Emily's clear, green-gray eyes. "Oh, your eyes. You must have glass eyes." Emily shook her head no and handed him the washcloth. He accepted it, but he continued to stare into her eyes. Emily looked away. She bent down to escape his gaze, wrapping his old sheets into a ball and put them on the floor next to her chair. Then she slid up the new gown for him to see. He looked at it blankly, but she reverted back to her eyes. "Please wash yourself and put this on," she said. She frowned, looking at his cast. Will you need help washing and dressing? I want to try myself first, he said. Emily said, I'll be over there if you need me. She put the folded gown next to him on the bed and turned her chair away to give him some privacy. While she waited, she reached out for her long legs and pointed her toes in her sandals. She clasped her hands together, rounded her shoulders, and cracked her knuckles in front of her. Her underarms felt moist, and 2 wet marks stained her blouse. She quickly brought her hands down onto her lap. She was wearing a long floral scarf around her head, a kendutush, and it itched in the heat, but it covered her blonde hair and helped avoid endless conversations on the subject. Emily was hungry, and it made her feel more hollow than ever. She looked down at the row of Colts at her mother, head bowed, eyes closed, listening through a stethoscope to the bony chest of Rabia. Olivia's blonde hair slipped from behind her ear and fell onto her face. Soon, Emily decided hazily the stethoscope would become a permanent physical link between Olivia and Rabia, like an interactive umbilical cord. I'm ready, the boy said. Emily turned her chair back. He put the gown on, but was unable to fasten the ties. You're so big, he said, so she stood over him to reach his back. Yes, I know, and so white. She looked at her pale hands, trying the back of the gown closed. The veins reached up her knuckles to her waist like blue rivers. Actually, I'm transparent, she thought with disgust. Yes, she said out loud. Very white.